Imagine this. Your billionaire husband walks out on you for his pregnant mistress. 3 days later, his mother, the woman who never really liked you, suddenly dies and leaves you her entire $100 million fortune. Oh, and one more thing. You just found out you're pregnant too, with triplets. What happens next isn't just revenge. It's a masterclass in power, betrayal, and poetic justice. Because when the man who thought he had it all loses everything to the woman he underestimated, that's when the real story begins. Stay till the end. Trust me, you won't believe how she turns his final move against him. If you love stories of revenge, betrayal, and women who rise stronger than ever, hit like, drop a comment, share this story, and don't forget to subscribe for more wild, true-to-life dramas like this. Now, let's begin the $100 revenge. Claire Morrison descended the floating stairways of her Lake Travis estate at 7:14 on a Monday morning in April, wearing pajamas and a messy bun, completely unaware that her life was about to detonate. The Texas sunrise painted the floor-to-ceiling windows gold. A Tesla sat in the driveway. Whole Foods bags covered the kitchen counter. Everything looked perfect, which should have been her first warning. Her husband Brandon stood at the kitchen island in business casual, staring at 3 suitcases lined up by the garage door. He wouldn't make eye contact. "Babe?" Claire's voice carried confusion, maybe a nervous laugh. "What's with the luggage? Did I forget we have a trip?" The silence stretched too long. "Claire, sit down." "You're scaring me." Brandon slid a manila envelope across the marble counter. "I need you to look at these, Martux." Her hands shook as she opened it. Divorce papers. Her brain couldn't process the words. "What is this?" "I've been seeing someone." His voice was flat, rehearsed. "For a while now. Her name's Lauren. She works at the company. She's pregnant, Claire. I want to be there for my child." The clock on the wall ticked. That was the only sound in the enormous kitchen. "Pregnant?" Claire's voice came out small and broken. "We've been trying for 3 years, 5 rounds of IVF. You said we'd keep trying. Maybe that's the universe telling us something. Maybe we're not meant to be parents together." "Who is she? How long? Does it matter?" "Yes, it matters." The rage surprised them both. Claire never yelled. Brandon actually stepped back. 18 months, he said defensively. "It just happened. She understands me, my pressure, building the company. You were always so focused on getting pregnant, you stopped seeing me." Claire laughed, a broken sound. "I stopped seeing you? I managed your entire life. Your calendar, your travel, your meals, your dry cleaning. And I'm grateful. The settlement reflects that. You get the house. $2 million. That's more than fair." $2 million? She looked down at the papers. "Your company sold for $400 million last month. The Post-it-Up protects business assets. You signed it. My lawyers confirmed it's ironclad." The memory hit her like ice water. "You made me sign that at your mother's hospital bedside. You said it was for estate planning." "It was, and now it's protecting what I built. Don't make this ugly, Claire. Take the house, take the money, move on." That's when Lauren Schaefer walked in from the garage. She was 27, blonde ponytail, designer athleisure, glowing skin, holding Starbucks. She looked at Brandon and completely ignored Claire's existence. "Babe, I loaded the rest. We should hit the road before Interstate 35 gets bad." Claire stared. This woman had been in her home, walking through her rooms, touching her things. "She's been here in our house?" Lauren turned, tilting her head with manufactured sympathy. "Claire, I know this is super hard, but Brandon and I are starting fresh, building a family, real family." She placed her hand on a small bump. "You'll find someone too, probably." "You brought her here?" Claire looked at Brandon. "To our home?" He grabbed Lauren's hand. "Let's go. I'll have movers get the rest of my stuff next week." Lauren paused at the door, turned back sweetly. "Oh, Claire, the Peloton in the master bedroom? Brandon bought that for me, so I'm taking it. Cool?" She didn't wait for an answer. The door slammed. Claire stood frozen in the kitchen, listening to Brandon's Tesla pull out of the driveway. She walked to the powder room and vomited. Then she sat on the bathroom floor for 5 full minutes in complete silence. When she finally started laughing, it sounded hysterical and broken, echoing off the marble tiles. 3 days later, Claire lived in Brandon's old University of Texas Austin hoodie. Cereal boxes covered the counter. Tissues were everywhere. She hadn't showered. When the FedEx overnight delivery arrived, she opened the door like a zombie and signed without thinking. The letterhead read Klein, Warren and Associates, Estate Law. Last will and testament of Miriam Richardson Morrison. Dear Mrs. Morrison, you are hereby requested to attend the reading of the estate of Miriam Richardson Morrison, deceased April 9th. Reading scheduled for 2 p.m. on April 19th, Houston, Texas. Claire stopped breathing. Miriam died? Memories flooded back, bringing Miriam's soup during chemo, learning her brisket recipe. Miriam squeezing her hand, saying, "You're the daughter I should have had." Brandon on the phone, annoyed. "Mom's fine. You don't need to visit again." "He didn't tell me." Claire spoke to the empty house. "His mother died and he didn't tell me." She threw her coffee mug at the wall. It shattered. Then she collapsed on the couch, sobbing into cushions that still smelled like the life she'd lost. The law firm occupied the 40th floor of a Houston high-rise. Claire borrowed a black dress from her neighbor and wore no makeup. Her face looked raw from crying. Brandon sat at the mahogany conference table with Lauren, who wore a Chanel maternity dress at 5 months pregnant, looking smug. Brandon's sister Margaret, an Ice Queen corporate attorney, sat rigid in her chair. Various distant cousins filled the other seats. Attorney Harold Klein, 60-something and impeccable, sat at the head of the table. Brandon whispered to Lauren, loud enough for Claire to hear, "This is a formality. Mom left me everything. The oil company, the River Oaks estate, the investment portfolio." Lauren giggled. "How much are we talking?" "North of 150 million. Klein cleared his throat. "Shall we begin?" He opened the document and adjusted his glasses. "I, Miriam Richardson Morrison, being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare this my last will and testament, executed on April 3rd, 6 days before my death." Brandon leaned forward, confident. "To my daughter, Margaret Elizabeth Morrison, I leave $2 million and my gratitude for her professional success." Margaret nodded, expected. "To my son, Brandon James Morrison, I leave the sum of $5 million in the Lake Tahoe cabin." The silence was absolute. Brandon laughed nervously. "I'm sorry, $5 million? Out of—" "And to my daughter-in-law, Claire Elizabeth Morrison, I leave the remainder of my estate. This includes $120 million in liquid assets and securities, the River Oaks residence and all contents, controlling shares of 68% in Richardson Oil Holdings valued at approximately $340 million, my personal jewelry collection, and my eternal gratitude for being the daughter I always wanted." You could hear a pin drop. Lauren laughed and looked at Brandon. "That's a mistake, right? They're divorced." "The will was executed April 3rd, Klein said calmly. "At that time, Mr. and Mrs. Morrison were legally married. The divorce wasn't finalized until April 15th, 6 days after the will was signed." Brandon stood furious. "This is complete garbage. My mother had stage 4 cancer. She was on morphine. She wasn't competent." Klein slid a folder across the table. Mrs. Morrison anticipated this objection. 3 independent psychiatric evaluations confirmed testamentary capacity, all dated within 5 days of execution. She was lucid, competent, and very clear about her intentions. He pulled out a letter and read, "To my son Brandon, you became the man I raised you not to be. Greedy, cruel. You threw away the best thing in your life for a pregnancy trap and a tax write-off. Claire loved you when you had nothing. She nursed me through chemo when you were too busy. She is my daughter. You are my disappointment." Margaret whispered, "Jesus Christ, Mom." Brandon's face turned red. "I'm contesting this. She was manipulated. There's a no contest clause, Mr. Morrison. Challenge the will, and you forfeit your $5 million entirely. Your sister as well." Margaret shot Brandon a sharp look. "Don't you dare." Lauren grabbed Brandon's arm, panicking. "You told me we were getting at least $50 million. You promised." "Shut up," Brandon hissed. Klein turned to Claire gently. "Mrs. Morrison, do you have any questions?" Claire had been silent this entire time. Her face was unreadable. She stood slowly. "Just one. When can I access the accounts?" "Immediately, Estate taxes are prepaid. Everything transfers today. Thank you. She walked toward the door. Brandon blocked her path. Claire, we need to talk. This isn't... She looked him dead in the eye. You left me 3 days after your mother died. You brought your pregnant mistress to our home. You told me I wasn't enough. She paused. Your mother disagreed. Excuse me. She walked past him. Brandon shouted after her, I'm fighting this. You'll get nothing. Claire didn't turn back. I already have everything. The door closed. Lauren turned to Brandon, hysterical. Fix this! You said we'd be set! Brandon stared at the closed door, his face twisted with rage and disbelief. Claire spent Saturday packing boxes in the Lake Travis house. Her phone rang constantly. She ignored every call. Reporters, lawyers, people she hadn't talked to in years suddenly wanting to catch up. A wave of nausea hit her hard. She ran to the bathroom and vomited again. Stress, she told her reflection. Just stress. But she'd been nauseated for 3 weeks straight. Morning, noon, and night, she dug through the bathroom drawer and found a pregnancy test from months ago. Left over from their IVF days, she took it and waited, sitting on the cold tile floor. 2 lines appeared. Claire dropped the test. Her back hit the wall. No, that's impossible. She took 4 more tests. Every single one came back positive. Monday morning found her in Dr. Elizabeth Hayes' office, sitting in a paper gown, trembling. Dr. Okonkwo was a warm Nigerian-American woman in her 40s who'd guided Claire through all 5 failed IVF attempts. Well, Claire, Dr. Okonkwo said, reviewing the ultrasound screen, your stress has 3 heartbeats. What? Dr. Okonkwo turned the monitor. 3 distinct sacs, 3 flickering lights. You're 11 weeks pregnant with triplets, spontaneous, not IVF. It happens. Rarely, but it happens. Claire stared at the screen. Tears streamed down her face. He left me because I couldn't get pregnant. We tried for 3 years, 5 IVF rounds. He said I was broken. And now, does he know? Claire wiped her face. Something hardened in her expression. No, and he won't. Not until I'm ready. Claire, this is high risk. Triplets at 34. You'll need support. I have $120 million. I'll buy support. The next 2 weeks became a blur of chaos. Claire moved into Miriam's River Oaks mansion, a 25,000 square foot palace that felt more like a museum than a home. Morning sickness with triplets was brutal. Her phone wouldn't stop ringing with press, lawyers, and supposed friends crawling out of the woodwork. On day 3, she was served with a lawsuit. Brandon was challenging the will on grounds of incompetency and undue influence. On day 5, a tabloid cover screamed, Gold digger daughter-in-law steals dying woman's fortune. On day 7, Brandon gave an interview to the Houston Chronicle. My mother was manipulated in her final weeks. Claire isolated her from family, poisoned her against her own son. I'm not fighting for money. I'm fighting for Mom's legacy and my family's future. Social media exploded. Justice for Miriam trended nationwide. Death threats flooded Claire's direct messages. Strangers called her every vile name imaginable. By day 10, Brandon's legal team, 8 attorneys from Houston's top firm, filed 15 separate motions. They challenged testamentary capacity, claimed undue influence, demanded Claire undergo psychiatric evaluation, requested an emergency asset freeze, and scheduled endless depositions. Claire's attorney, a solo practitioner who was clearly overwhelmed, called her with bad news. Claire, they're burying us in paperwork. You need a bigger firm. Every major firm in Houston either works for Richardson Oil or is scared of Brandon's connections. She tried hiring a top estate litigation firm from Dallas, paid a $150,000 retainer. 48 hours later, the managing partner called to withdraw. Mrs. Morrison, a conflict emerged. Mr. Morrison's new venture involves 3 of our major clients. We can't... He threatened you, Claire said quietly. Silence on the line. I understand. That night, Claire sat in Miriam's massive library, hand on her belly, crying quietly. The house was too big, too empty. She was alone, pregnant with triplets, facing unlimited legal firepower. I can't do this alone, she whispered to the darkness. But Miriam had anticipated this too. Claire reached out to Senator Patricia Richardson, Miriam's estranged older sister. The retired senator was 78, a Texas legend with a whiskey voice and sharp eyes that missed nothing. They met at the senator's Georgetown townhouse a week later. Miriam sent me a letter, Senator Richardson said, sliding a USB drive across her desk. Told me if Brandon contested, I should give you this. Claire plugged it into the laptop with shaking hands. The first file was a video. Miriam, clearly lucid despite her illness, sitting in her hospital bed 1 week before death. I'm making this recording to confirm I am of sound mind. My son Brandon has become a man I don't recognize. Cruel, greedy. Claire is the daughter I always wanted. Brandon gets $5 million because he's my son. Claire gets everything else because she earned it. The second file was an audio recording, a phone call between Brandon and Lauren recorded on Miriam's phone. Brandon's voice. Once mom dies, we're set. The dementia angle will be easy. Claire gets nothing. Lauren, are you sure? What if she fights? Brandon, she won't. She's too weak. Always has been. The third file contained financial records showing Brandon had withdrawn $3.2 million from Miriam's accounts while she was hospitalized. He'd forged her signature. Claire watched and listened to everything twice, tears streaming down her face. She knew, Claire whispered. She knew he'd do this. Senator Richardson nodded. Miriam was sharp until the end. She protected you. Now use this. Destroy him. Claire filed a countersuit, elder abuse, theft, fraud. The media narrative flipped overnight. Tech CEO accused of stealing from dying mother dominated headlines. For 72 glorious hours, Claire tasted victory. Brandon's new company investors pulled out. His stock dropped 45%. Lauren's Instagram went private. Team Claire trended on social media. Claire's legal position looked unassailable. She allowed herself to breathe. She took her first prenatal yoga class, bought maternity clothes, actually smiled at her reflection in the mirror. Then Brandon struck back. He called a press conference. Brandon and Lauren stood together, both looking devastated. I made mistakes, Brandon said, tears in his eyes. I hurt Claire. The way I ended our marriage was wrong, and I'm ashamed. But what she's doing now, using my deceased mother's recordings to destroy me, that's not justice, that's revenge. Lauren dabbed her eyes. We're just trying to build a life for our baby. Brandon paused for effect. And what nobody knows, Claire is pregnant too. Gasps erupted from the press corps. With my children, triplets, conceived during our marriage. I have medical records proving the conception date, 3 weeks before I filed for divorce. He slid medical records to the press. These are my biological children, 5 kids total, and Claire is using my inheritance, money that should provide for my children, to wage legal war against their father. It was a perfect trap, and he was right. The medical records confirmed the conception timing. It had happened during their last attempt to try naturally between IVF rounds. Public opinion flipped again. She's keeping his kids from him? 3 more kids and she wants all the money? Maybe he is the victim. Brandon filed a new lawsuit, emergency custody petition. He argued Claire was emotionally unstable and that the pregnancy should be monitored by a court-appointed guardian. Claire's attorney delivered the devastating news. Claire, he's going to argue you're unfit, that the inheritance in China should go in trust with him as guardian for all 5 children. He can't do that. In Texas? With 5 kids and $120 million at stake? A conservative judge might agree. The catastrophes came in rapid succession, each one more devastating than the last. First, at 20 weeks pregnant, Claire was forced to undergo a psychiatric evaluation. The evaluator was Brandon's expert witness, paid $75,000 to find her unstable. The report concluded, subject displays narcissistic tendencies, vengeful ideation, and emotional instability incompatible with the demands of a high-risk pregnancy. Second, the judge granted a temporary freeze of all estate assets as pending custody resolution. Claire's accounts were locked. She couldn't pay her salaries. She couldn't access her inheritance. Everything Miriam left her was suddenly out of reach. Third, Senator Richardson, her only powerful ally, died suddenly of a stroke. She was 78, and the timing was simply bad luck. But it felt like the universe was conspiring against Claire. Fourth, Lauren gave birth at 34 weeks. a healthy baby boy. Photos flooded Instagram within hours. Brandon crying, holding his son, with the caption, "My world," followed by praying hands and a heart emoji. Public sentiment shifted again. He looks like a good dad. Maybe Claire's the problem. That night, Claire sat alone in the massive mansion at 22 weeks pregnant with triplets. Her belly was enormous. Her hands trembled as she scrolled through her phone. A text from Margaret, Brandon's sister. "Give up. You've lost. He's taking those babies and the money. Should have just signed the papers." Claire sat in darkness, her hand on her swollen stomach. "I'm sorry, babies," she whispered. "I'm so sorry I'm not strong enough." She looked at the bottle of sleeping pills on her nightstand, picked it up, held it. The bottle was still in her hand when exhaustion finally pulled her under. She woke the next morning on the couch. Sunlight streamed through the windows. The pills sat unopened on the coffee table. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Mrs. Morrison, you don't know me. My name is Rebecca Miller. I was your husband's executive assistant for 6 years. I have information you need. Please call me." Claire's hands shook as she dialed. Rachel's voice was nervous but determined. "I should have come forward sooner. I was scared. Brandon made us all sign NDAs, but I can't watch this anymore. I have copies of everything. Emails, texts, calendar appointments. I backed them up before he fired me." "Why are you helping me?" "Because I watched him become a monster. And because when my mom had cancer, you sent flowers. You didn't even know me, but you remembered I mentioned it once at a holiday party." Brandon never asked about her once. Rachel's evidence was comprehensive and damning. The affair timeline showed it had started 18 months before Brandon left. Hotel receipts, payments to Lauren's apartment through Venmo, calendar blocks labeled L-Time. Text messages from Lauren to her friend. "If I get pregnant, he has to leave her. And once we're married, community property equals half his fortune. Easiest 200 million I'll ever make. Laugh out loud." An audio file that had auto-backed up from Brandon's phone captured a conversation between Brandon and his attorney. "Postnup protects business assets. She gets 2 million max." Brandon: "What if she's pregnant when I file?" Attorney: "Is she?" Brandon: "No, we stopped IVF, but hypothetically?" Attorney: "Claim co-parenting, file for shared custody. Drag it out. She'll give up. They always do." Brandon laughed on the recording. "God, I love Texas law." But the smoking gun was in the emails between Brandon and his chief technology officer. Brandon: "Use Mom's Richardson Oil research and development files for our new drilling tech. She'll never know." CTO: "Isn't that her company's intellectual property?" Brandon: "She's dying. Who's gonna sue? Claire. She can barely work Excel." Brandon had built his $400 million company on technology stolen from his dying mother's business. Claire listened to everything, her face hardening with each revelation. "Rachel, can you testify?" "I'll do better. I'll go public." Claire didn't use lawyers this time. She used media. The 60 Minutes interview aired on a Sunday night. Claire, 26 weeks pregnant with a high-risk pregnancy, sat composed across from Leslie Stahl. "Claire, you've been called a gold digger, unstable, vengeful. How do you respond?" "I respond with evidence." She played the tapes. All of them. Lauren's text about trapping Brandon with a pregnancy, Brandon's attorney call about manipulating custody, the stolen intellectual property, Rachel's testimony corroborating everything. The explosion was instantaneous and massive. Brandon the thief trended #1 worldwide. Brandon's investors pulled all remaining funding. The company board voted him out as CEO. A criminal investigation opened for intellectual property theft and elder abuse. Lauren's Instagram was bombarded with comments calling her a homewrecker and gold digger. Lauren broke spectacularly. She went live on Instagram, sobbing hysterically. "I didn't know. He told me they were separated. He said she was the crazy one. He told me to get pregnant. Said once I had his baby, I'd be set for life. I was stupid. I'm 27. I thought he loved me." She threw Brandon completely under the bus on camera for millions to watch. Their relationship imploded publicly. Brandon tweeted, then quickly deleted, "Betrayed by everyone, even her." 1 week later, the judge lifted the asset freeze. Brandon's custody claim was dismissed as fraud and bad faith. Criminal charges were formally filed. Claire had won. Headlines proclaimed, "Justice for Claire Morrison." At 30 weeks pregnant, Claire returned to the Lake Travis house, not the mansion. This house, full of memories, but truly hers. She set up the nursery, bought 3 cribs, picked names Miriam, Patricia, and James, after Brandon's grandfather who'd been kind to her. She hosted a small dinner with Rachel and Dr. Okonkwo. For one weekend, she allowed herself peace. She sat in the nursery, hand on her belly, and whispered, "We made it, babies. We're safe." She actually believed it. At 34 weeks pregnant, Claire's phone rang. FBI. "Mrs. Morrison, we need you to come in. New evidence in the Morrison case." The FBI office was stark and intimidating. Agent Rodriguez sat across from her with a folder full of documents. "We've been investigating Brandon's business dealings. We found something troubling." He showed her wire transfers. $18 million moved from Richardson Oil Holdings to an offshore limited liability company. "I don't understand," Claire said. "These transfers are authorized with your digital signature. Dated 3 weeks ago, right after you regained access to the inheritance." The room tilted. "Mrs. Morrison, did you authorize these transfers?" "No, Brandon must have. I never." "Mr. Morrison claims you threatened to destroy him financially and that you're hiding assets offshore." "That's a lie." Her lawyer arrived and pulled her aside, whispering urgently, "Don't say anything else. This is a trap. Even if you win, legal fees will bleed the estate dry. He planned this before losing access." Claire realized the horrible truth. Even in defeat, Brandon had planted a time bomb designed to destroy her. That night at home, 36 weeks pregnant and alone, Claire started having contractions. Early labor. The panic attack combined with premature contractions created a medical emergency. She called 911, voice shaking. "Please, I'm having triplets. I'm alone. Please hurry." The ambulance ride was a blur. The hospital delivery room was bright and terrifying. Dr. Okonkwo was there, thank God, along with a team of specialists for the high-risk triplet delivery. "Claire, you're doing great," Dr. Okonkwo said. "Almost there." "I can't do this," Claire sobbed, exhausted and terrified. "Yes, you can." A nurse leaned in. "Ma'am, is there anyone we can call?" "No," Claire cried. "There's no one." In the waiting room, Brandon arrived. Someone on the hospital staff had tipped him off. Austin was a small town and gossip traveled fast. "I'm the father," he told the nurse. "I have rights." "Sir, she's in active labor." "Those are my children. Texas law gives me rights." He pushed into the delivery room. "Get out!" Claire screamed mid-contraction. "Claire, please," Brandon's voice broke. "I'm sorry for everything, but these are my children. Let me be here, please." "Sir, you need to leave," Dr. Okonkwo said firmly. "I'll drop everything," Brandon said desperately. "The FBI thing, I'll confess I set you up. Just let me meet my kids." Claire, breathing through another contraction, locked eyes with him. A long beat passed. "You'll confess? On record?" Brandon nodded frantically. "Yes, I swear." Claire's face was unreadable. "Fine, stay." The birth took 3 hours. 2 girls and 1 boy, delivered healthy despite being 5 weeks early. Each baby was whisked away briefly, then brought back, perfect and tiny and crying. Brandon held one of the daughters. Genuine tears rolled down his face. "She's perfect. Oh my God. They're all perfect." Claire watched him exhausted. "What are you naming your son? The one with Lauren?" Brandon looked confused by the question. James, after my grandfather. Why?" "That's nice. That's really nice." She paused. "Brandon, can you hand me my phone?" Still confused, Brandon handed it to her. Claire tapped the screen. The recording stopped. "You just confessed," she said calmly, "on tape, to framing me for embezzlement, in front of 4 nurses, 2 residents, and Dr. Okonkwo." All color drained from Brandon's face. "You're not on the birth certificates. I filed paperwork yesterday terminating your parental rights on grounds of fraud and emotional abuse. My attorney says Texas family law supports it, especially since you're under criminal investigation." "You can't. That's not." "Actually, I can. Texas Family Code, Section 161.001. Look it up." Security entered. She'd had them on standby. "He's trespassing. Get him out." As they dragged him out, Brandon screamed, "You liar! You told me!" The door slammed shut. Silence filled the room. Dr. Okonkwo looked at Claire with quiet admiration. "Damn, girl." Claire held her three babies close. "I learned from the best." "Who?" Claire smiled tiredly. "His mother." Golden hour light filled the nursery of the Lake Travis house, casting warm shadows across three matching cribs. Claire fed Miriam while Patricia and James slept, their tiny chests rising and falling in perfect rhythm. The chaos was beautiful. Bottles lined up on the changing table, blankets draped over the rocking chair, tiny clothes in pastel colors scattered across every surface. This was her life now, and she couldn't imagine it any other way. Her phone buzzed with a news alert. She glanced at it while Miriam nursed contentedly, her small hand wrapped around Claire's finger. Brandon Moritz had pled guilty to wire fraud and intellectual property theft. 4 years in federal prison. The article included a photo of him in an orange jumpsuit, looking diminished and defeated. Lauren Schaefer had sued him for child support and settled for $8 million. Claire felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not vindication, not even the ghost of anger. Just the peaceful indifference she'd worked so hard to achieve. The man who'd tried to destroy her was nothing more than a distant memory now, a cautionary tale she'd tell her children when they were old enough to understand. The doorbell rang. She carefully put Miriam in her crib, tucking the blanket around her small body, and went downstairs. A FedEx letter waited on the porch. Return address, Federal Correctional Institution, Coleman, Florida. She opened it standing in the doorway, one hand still on the doorframe. "Claire, I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I was cruel, greedy. I threw away the best thing in my life for something that meant nothing. Please, one day when they're old enough, tell them about me. Not the monster I became, but the man I was when we met. The man who loved you before I forgot how. The man who wanted to be a good father before I destroyed that chance. Please, Brandon." Claire read it twice, then a third time. She walked to the fireplace and stood there for a marching moment, the letter trembling slightly in her hand. She could burn it. That would be the dramatic thing to do, the satisfying closure everyone expected. But her children deserved better than drama. They deserved truth, complicated and messy as it was. She folded the letter carefully and placed it in a box labeled "For Later," a box that held other pieces of their father, a few photos from happier times, his grandfather's watch that had been passed down through generations, a birthday card he'd written to her years ago when his handwriting still looked hopeful. "Your father was a good man who made terrible choices," she said to the sleeping babies upstairs, her voice carrying through the quiet house. "Maybe one day when you're older, I'll tell you about the man he was before he lost his way. But right now, you have me, and that's enough." She settled into the rocking chair with Patricia, who'd woken up fussy and hungry. Through the window, the Texas sunset painted everything gold. The trees, the water, the future she was building one day at a time. She donated $60 million to fertility research and programs supporting single mothers. The announcement had made national news, with journalists calling her a philanthropist and a role model. She didn't feel like either. She felt like someone who'd been given an unexpected gift and wanted to share it with others who needed it more. Richardson Oil Holdings, now under her leadership, became the first major Texas energy company to commit to carbon-neutral operations by 2035. The board had resisted at first, but Claire had Miriam's 68% controlling shares and the conviction that came from surviving the impossible. They'd fallen in line eventually. The doorbell rang again. Claire sighed, carefully placed Patricia back in her crib, and headed downstairs once more. Rebecca Miller stood on the porch holding a casserole dish and smiling nervously. "I hope this isn't weird," she said. "I made too much lasagna and thought maybe you could use a meal that doesn't require two hands." Claire laughed, a real laugh that came from somewhere deep in her chest. "It's perfect. Come in." They sat in the kitchen while the baby slept upstairs, eating lasagna and talking about nothing important. Rachel had started her own executive assistant firm, specializing in supporting women entrepreneurs. Business was booming. Apparently, there were a lot of women who wanted assistance, who understood what it meant to work for difficult bosses. You inspired me, Rachel said, twirling pasta around her fork. Watching you fight back against Brandon when everyone said you should just take the settlement and disappear. I realized I didn't have to let fear control my choices anymore. I was terrified the entire time, Claire admitted. Every court appearance, every news story, every moment I thought I might lose everything. I was so scared. But you did it anyway. That's what courage is. Not the absence of fear, but doing what's right despite being afraid. After Rachel left, Claire stood in the nursery doorway watching three tiny chests rise and fall. Miriam, Patricia, and James, her whole world in three small bodies, each one a miracle she'd been told would never happen. Sometimes at night, she still had nightmares. Brandon's face twisting with rage as security dragged him from the delivery room. The judge's gavel coming down on motions to freeze her assets. The tabloid headlines calling her a gold digger and worse. But then one of the babies would cry, and she'd pick them up, and the nightmares would fade like morning fog. She thought about the woman she'd been 6 months ago, sitting on a bathroom floor after finding divorce papers, her whole world crumbling, believing she wasn't enough, that she'd failed at the one thing she wanted most, accepting $2 million and a house as fair compensation for 8 years of marriage. That woman was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, someone who'd learned that the opposite of love wasn't hate, it was indifference. And Claire was finally blissfully indifferent to Brandon Morrison and his opinions about her worth. The nursing schedule, the diaper changes, the 3 a.m. feedings, it was exhausting and wonderful. Some days she hired help from an agency that specialized in multiples. Other days she insisted on doing everything herself, proving to some invisible audience that she could handle it. Dr. Okonkwo stopped by weekly, ostensibly for checkups, but really just to make sure Claire wasn't drowning under the weight of single motherhood and running a multi-million-dollar foundation. "You're doing great," the doctor would say, watching Claire efficiently change 3 diapers in under 10 minutes. "Better than most people with 1 baby, let alone 3. "I have no choice," Claire would respond, the same answer every time. "They need me. They're lucky to have you." Don't forget that on the hard days. One evening, Claire's phone rang with a blocked number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Miss Morrison?" A woman's voice, professional and careful. "This is Linda Chen from the Wall Street Journal. We're doing a feature on women rebuilding after financial abuse and divorce. Your story has resonated with so many people. Would you be willing to speak with us?" Claire thought about it, watching the sunset through her kitchen window. Part of her wanted privacy, wanted to disappear into her new life with her babies and never think about Brandon or courtrooms or inheritance battles again. But another part, the part that had learned to fight back, knew her story could help others. Women trapped in marriages like hers had been. Women signing documents they didn't understand because they trusted their partners. Women being told they weren't smart enough, pretty enough, successful enough. "Yes," she said, "I'll talk to you." The interview ran 2 weeks later, Claire's face on the cover of the Wall Street Journal, holding all 3 babies with the headline, "The $120 million Comeback, How One Woman Fought Financial Abuse and Won." The response was overwhelming. Thousands of messages flooded her inbox and social media accounts. Women thanking her for speaking out. Women sharing their own stories of financial manipulation and legal abuse. Women asking for advice, for help, for hope, that they could survive what seemed insurmountable. Claire read every single message, even the ones that made her cry. She started a foundation with $10 million from the inheritance. It provided legal assistance and financial education to women navigating divorce from financially abusive partners. She named it the Miriam Morrison Foundation, honoring the woman who'd saved her life from beyond the grave. 3 months after the foundation launched, she received a thank you card from a woman in Oklahoma. Simple floral design, handwritten message. "You saved my life. I was about to sign away everything to my husband because I thought I had no choice. Your story gave me courage to fight. My lawyer says we're going to win. Thank you for showing me that standing up to a bully is possible, even when you're terrified." Claire put the card in the box with Brandon's letter. Someday she'd show her children both. The darkness and the light, the cruelty and the kindness, the whole complicated truth of how they came to be. Brandon's trial dominated headlines for weeks during the following fall. Claire didn't attend most of it, watching news coverage from home while the babies napped or played on their activity mats. The evidence was overwhelming. Stolen intellectual property, forged signatures on financial documents, wire fraud that crossed state lines. The man who'd once told her she wasn't enough was convicted on all counts. His sentencing hearing was scheduled for a Wednesday in November, almost exactly 1 year after Claire had discovered she was pregnant. She surprised everyone by appearing. She sat in the back of the courtroom, wearing a simple black dress and minimal jewelry, her hair pulled back in a professional bun. Brandon's lawyer spotted her immediately, leaning over to whisper to his client. Brandon turned, and their eyes met for the first time in 7 months. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. The arrogance that had once defined him was gone, replaced with something that might have been shame or maybe just exhaustion. His expensive suit hung loose on a frame that had lost weight. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Patricia Hernandez, reviewed the pre-sentence report with careful attention. Brandon's lawyer argued for leniency. His client had no prior criminal record, had cooperated with investigators, showed genuine remorse. The prosecution painted a different picture. A man who'd stolen from his dying mother, manipulated his wife, built a fortune on fraudulent foundations, then tried to weaponize the legal system when his schemes unraveled. "Does anyone wish to make a victim impact statement?" Judge Hernandez asked. Claire stood slowly. The courtroom went silent. Even the journalists in the gallery stopped typing on their laptops. "Your Honor, I'm Claire Morrison. I was married to the defendant for 8 years." Her voice was steady, carrying clearly through the large room. "Brandon Morrison told me I wasn't enough. Not pretty enough, not successful enough, not worthy of the life he could provide. After 5 failed rounds of IVF, he implied I was broken, that my body had failed us both. Then he left me for someone younger, someone who could give him what I couldn't." She paused, gathering her thoughts. Brandon's head was bowed, but she could see his shoulders shaking slightly. "3 days later, I found out I was pregnant, with triplets, the children he'd wanted desperately for years. I also inherited $120 million from his mother, who saw through him long before I did, who protected me even after death." Someone in the gallery gasped softly. "Brandon tried to destroy me after that. He challenged the will on grounds his mother wasn't competent, though she was sharper in her final weeks than most people are in perfect health. He filed for custody of children he'd never wanted with me, using them as leverage to access the inheritance. He planted evidence to frame me for embezzlement, hoping to drain my resources through legal fees even if the charges didn't stick." Her voice didn't waver, though her hands trembled slightly. She clasped them together. "He used the legal system as a weapon, the way abusers always do when they lose control, not to seek justice, but to punish me for refusing to disappear quietly, for refusing to accept that I wasn't enough." She looked directly at Brandon, who finally raised his head to meet her gaze. "But I'm not here for revenge, Your Honor. I'm here because other women are watching. Women in marriages like mine was, women being told they're not enough, women signing postnuptial agreements at hospital bedsides without reading them carefully, women who think they have to accept crumbs from men who took everything." She straightened her shoulders. "I want them to know you are enough. You always were, Bia, and when someone shows you who they really are, not who you hope they might be, but who they actually are, believe them. Then protect yourself accordingly. Do what I did. Fight back. Stand up. Refuse to disappear." She sat down to absolute silence. Judge Hernandez looked at Brandon for a long moment. "Mr. Morrison, do you have anything to say before I impose sentence?" Brandon stood slowly, his lawyer's hand on his arm for support. "Your Honor, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I became someone I don't recognize. Greedy, cruel, willing to hurt the people who love me most. I can't undo what I've done. I can only say I'm sorry and hope that someday, somehow, I can be someone my children might respect." His voice broke on the last word. Judge Hernandez's expression remained impassive. "Mr. Morrison, you stole from your dying mother. You manipulated your wife. You built a company worth hundreds of millions of dollars on stolen intellectual property. When your schemes unraveled, you weaponized the legal system to destroy the woman who'd stood by you for 8 years. This court sees no genuine remorse, only regret at being caught. She paused, letting her words sink in. You are hereby sentenced to 4 years in federal prison, the maximum allowed under federal sentencing guidelines. You will also pay restitution in the amount of $3.2 million to the Morrison estate, plus court costs. This sentence will run consecutively with any state charges that may be filed. May God have mercy on your soul. The gavel came down with a sharp crack that echoed through the courtroom. As the marshals led Brandon away in handcuffs, he turned one last time. His mouth moved, forming words Claire could barely make out from across the room. It looked like, "I'm sorry." Claire nodded once. Acknowledgement, not forgiveness. Then she gathered her bag and walked out of the courtroom with her head high. Outside, reporters swarmed like wasps. Cameras flashed. Microphones thrust toward her face. Questions shouted from every direction. Claire stopped at the courthouse steps and raised one hand for silence. Remarkably, they quieted. This case was never about money, she said clearly. It was about power and control. My former husband used both to manipulate everyone around him, including his dying mother who loved him despite everything. I hope this outcome sends a message that financial abuse has real consequences, that using the legal system as a weapon has consequences, that telling someone they're not enough has consequences. She looked directly into the nearest camera. To anyone in a similar situation, document everything. Trust your instincts. Don't sign documents you don't understand, no matter who asks you to. And most importantly, know your worth. You don't need someone else to validate it. Thank you. She walked to her car without taking questions, ignoring the shouted follow-ups about her plans, her children, her foundation. That night, she video called Dr. Okonkwo while the babies slept in their cribs, exhausted from a day at the park. How do you feel? The doctor asked, her kind face filling the screen. Relieved, sad, grateful. Is it possible to feel all of that at once? Absolutely. You're grieving the man you thought he was while celebrating freedom from the man he became. That's healthy. That's normal. That's human. I keep thinking about the early days, Claire admitted, pulling a throw blanket over her lap. When he was different, or when I thought he was different. I don't even know anymore what was real and what was performance. Maybe he was different once, or maybe he just hid his true nature better. Either way, that's not your burden to carry. You didn't make him steal from his mother. You didn't make him lie to you for 18 months. You didn't make him weaponize the legal system. Those were his choices. When do I tell the kids? They'll ask about their father eventually. When they're old enough to understand complexity, when they can grasp that people aren't simply good or bad, but complicated mixtures of both. And you'll know when that time comes. Trust your instincts. They've served you well so far. After they hung up, Claire walked through the quiet house. It had taken months, but it finally felt like home rather than a museum of her old life. She'd redecorated carefully, removing every trace of Brandon's minimalist aesthetic. The walls were warm colors now, soft yellows and gentle blues, not the stark white he'd insisted on because it was sophisticated. Family photos covered the mantel in mismatched frames. Claire and the babies at the park. Claire and Miriam, the woman, not the baby, at Miriam's final birthday party that Claire had organized while Brandon was too busy with work. Claire and Senator Richardson at the memorial service. Rachel making faces to get the babies to smile. In the corner sat an enormous teddy bear, a gift from Rachel after the trial concluded. The triplets loved it. Patricia would grab its ears and squeal with delight. James would hide behind it during peekaboo. Miriam would try to wrestle it to the ground, all 30 pounds of determined baby against 5 feet of stuffed animal. Claire picked up a framed photo of Miriam Morrison from her final birthday party, the one Claire had organized at the hospital with decorations and a cake and photos from her wedding to Brandon's father. Claire had stood in the background of this photo, arranging flowers while Miriam smiled at the camera. "Thank you," Claire whispered to the image, "for seeing me when no one else did, for protecting me even after you were gone, for teaching me that being kind doesn't mean being weak. I'll make you proud, I promise." The foundation's work had expanded rapidly in the months since she'd started it. Within 6 months, they'd helped 200 women negotiate fair divorce settlements, access emergency housing, find employment. Rebuild credit destroyed by financially abusive partners. The legal team Claire assembled was fierce and competent, led surprisingly by Margaret, Brandon's sister, who'd reached out 3 months after the trial with an unexpected apology. Their first meeting had been tense, held in a neutral coffee shop, with Claire ready to walk out at any moment. "I'm sorry," Margaret had said without preamble. "I believed his version of events for too long. Mom tried to tell me what kind of man he'd become, but I didn't want to see it. He's my little brother. I wanted to believe he was the person I remembered from childhood, not the monster he'd turned into." "Why are you telling me this now?" Margaret's face had been pained, vulnerable in a way Claire had never seen before. "Because I'm getting divorced too. And I just realized my husband had me sign a postnup 5 years ago that I never really read, never had my own lawyer review." Sound familiar? They'd worked together since then, Margaret's corporate law expertise invaluable to the Foundation's mission of helping women protect themselves. 1 year after Miriam's death, Claire held a memorial service at the River Oaks estate. She decided not to sell the mansion after all, despite its size and the memories that haunted certain rooms. Instead, it became the Foundation's headquarters, a fitting legacy for a woman who'd used her wealth to protect the vulnerable rather than hoard it for status. Friends, colleagues, Foundation beneficiaries, and former Richardson Oil employees gathered in the garden where Miriam had spent hours tending to her flowers. Claire stood at a small podium, the Texas sun warm on her shoulders, and spoke about the woman who'd saved her life. Miriam Richardson Morrison knew that money could be a weapon or a shield, Claire said, her voice carrying across the assembled crowd. She watched her son use it as a weapon, to control, to manipulate, to hurt. So she chose to make it a shield. For me, for women like me, for everyone who needed protection from those who abuse power. She paused, looking around at the faces watching her. Her legacy isn't the $120 million she left me or the oil company or this beautiful home. Her legacy and the message she sent: protect the vulnerable, stand up to bullies, and never apologize for being strong. Never apologize for knowing your worth. Never apologize for refusing to accept less than you deserve. The crowd applauded. Claire released butterflies in Miriam's honor, monarchs that Miriam had loved, had kept a whole section of the garden planted with milkweed specifically to attract them. They spiraled upward into the cloudless Texas sky, orange and black wings catching the sunlight. As the butterflies disappeared into the blue, Claire felt something shift deep inside her chest. The last piece of anger releasing like a held breath, the final bit of pain letting go its grip on her heart. She was free, truly, completely free, not just from Brandon, but from the woman she'd been when she was with him. Small, uncertain, constantly seeking validation from someone who withheld it as a tool of control. That woman was gone. In her place stood someone new, someone stronger, someone enough. The triplets' first birthday party was beautiful chaos that somehow exceeded even Claire's expectations. Rachel had brought an elaborate 3-tier cake decorated with farm animals that Miriam promptly destroyed with both hands, smearing frosting across her face, her hair, the high chair tray, and somehow the ceiling. Patricia was more cautious, using one careful finger to taste test each color before committing. James ignored the cake entirely, more interested in the crinkly wrapping paper that made satisfying sounds when he crushed it. Claire took what felt like 1,000 photos, laughing as birthday hats fell off, squirming heads, and helium balloons escaped through the open back door to float away into the Texas sky. Dr. Okonkwo helped wrangle toddlers who moved in 3 different directions simultaneously, their newfound mobility making them exponentially harder to manage. Margaret brought age-appropriate gifts that wouldn't rot teeth or make obnoxious electronic noises. The godmother's prerogative, she declared. "Can you believe it's been a year?" Rachel asked, watching Patricia attempt to eat a balloon string while making intense eye contact with her mother. "Some days it feels like yesterday that I was in that delivery room, terrified and alone," Claire admitted. "Other days it feels like a lifetime ago, like I've lived 3 different lives in 12 months. You look happy, really happy, not just putting on a brave face anymore." "I am happy. That surprises me sometimes. After everything Brandon did, after how close I came to losing everything, I didn't think I'd ever feel this way again. But I do." The foundation had grown beyond Claire's wildest expectations during that first year. They'd helped over 500 women navigate divorces from financially abusive partners in 18 months. The legal team expanded to 6 attorneys working full-time, plus a dozen volunteer lawyers who took cases pro bono. They'd opened satellite offices in Dallas and San Antonio, with plans for Houston and Fort Worth in development. Claire balanced foundation work with motherhood by being ruthlessly efficient with her time. Meetings happened during nap time. Emails got answered after bedtime. She hired a wonderful nanny named Maria 3 days a week, but insisted on doing mornings and nights herself, unwilling to miss those precious moments of connection. "You'll burn out," did Okonkwo warn during a routine checkup, where she'd noticed the dark circles under Claire's eyes. "You can't run a growing foundation and raise triplets alone without consequences." "Maybe, but I'll burn out doing something that matters, something that helps other women avoid what I went through." The babies matter too. They need you healthy, not exhausted and resentful. "I know, I'm trying to find balance. It's just hard when every day brings another woman who needs help, another story that breaks my heart, another chance to make a difference." It was hard to find balance, nearly impossible some days. Claire often felt like she was failing at everything simultaneously. Distracted during foundation conference calls because a baby was crying in the background. Guilty during baby time because she was mentally composing emails and reviewing legal briefs. But mostly underneath the exhaustion and the constant juggling, she felt grateful. 3 healthy children who lit up when she walked into a room. Meaningful work that helped women escape situations like hers had been. Financial security that meant she'd never have to depend on anyone else for survival. Freedom from a man who tried to break her and failed. Brandon wrote letters from federal prison in Florida. They arrived with surprising regularity, one every few weeks. Claire didn't open most of them. She put them in a box in her office closet, unread, for the kids to decide what to do with someday when they were old enough to understand their father's story. One letter she did open, received 6 months into his 4-year sentence. Something about the envelope felt different. Lighter somehow, less demanding. "Claire, I'm in therapy here. Court mandated at first, but I've kept going voluntarily. The therapist says I have narcissistic personality disorder and control issues stemming from childhood trauma I never addressed. I'm not making excuses. I'm trying to understand how I became the person who hurt you so badly. You deserve better. You always deserve better. I'm sorry I couldn't see it until I lost everything. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I'm working on being someone my kids might be able to respect someday, if you ever give me that chance. Brandon." Claire folded the letter carefully and put it back in the box with the others. Maybe someday she'd respond. Maybe she wouldn't. The choice was entirely hers now, and that freedom was worth more than any apology he could write. Lauren reached out too, surprisingly, through Instagram direct message on a quiet Tuesday evening while Claire was folding tiny clothes in front of the television. "I know you have no reason to talk to me, but I wanted to apologize. I was wrong about everything. I believed his lies about you being crazy and controlling. I thought I was special, that what we had was different than what you'd had with him. I was so naive and selfish. Now I'm raising his son alone on child support checks while he sits in prison, and I realize I got exactly what I deserved. But you didn't deserve what we did to you. I'm truly sorry." Claire stared at the message for a long time, her thumb hovering over the delete button. Part of her wanted to ignore it, to let Lauren live with her guilt and regret without offering any absolution. But another part, the part that had learned compassion through suffering, knew that forgiveness was about freeing herself, not making Lauren feel better. She typed slowly. "Thank you for saying that. I hope you and your son are okay. Children shouldn't suffer for their parents' mistakes. If you ever need help, resources, support, whatever, the Miriam Morrison Foundation has programs for single mothers. No judgment. We all deserve a chance to rebuild." Lauren's response came immediately, almost frantically. "Thank you. That means more than you know. I didn't expect kindness from you. I don't deserve it." They never became friends, but the exchange brought Claire unexpected peace. Forgiveness, she was learning, wasn't about excusing harmful behavior or pretending it didn't hurt. It was about refusing to let that harm define her future or poison her present with bitterness. The foundation's second annual gala raised $12 million on a glittering Saturday night in downtown Austin. Claire gave a speech about financial abuse that went viral afterward, shared across social media platforms by thousands of women who'd lived similar stories or knew someone who had. 1 in 3 women experiences financial abuse in intimate relationships, she told the ballroom full of donors and supporters, her voice steady despite her nervousness at public speaking. It looks like a partner who controls all the money, like signing documents you don't understand because you trust them and they tell you not to worry about the details. Like being told you are not smart enough to handle finances. Like discovering after years of marriage that you have no assets in your own name, no credit history, no financial identity separate from your spouse. She paused, looking around at faces that ranged from shocked to knowing to sympathetic. I was lucky. I had an unexpected inheritance that gave me resources to fight back. Most women don't have that. They leave abusive marriages with nothing, start over from absolute zero, and face years of legal battles with no money for attorneys. That's why this foundation exists. Because every woman deserves the resources to fight back. Because no one should stay in an abusive situation due to financial fear. Because we're done accepting crumbs from men who took everything. The applause was thunderous, lasting so long that Claire felt embarrassed and grateful in equal measure. By the end of the night, they'd exceeded their fundraising goal by $3 million. A woman approached Claire afterward as she was gathering her coat and bag, ready to go home to relieve Maria and check on the sleeping babies. The woman was elegant and poised, probably in her 50s, with silver hair and an expensive dress. Mrs. Morrison, I'm Jennifer Walsh. I'm the CEO of a tech company in California. I went through something remarkably similar 5 years ago. My ex-husband tried to use the courts to bankrupt me, drain my company's resources, destroy everything I'd built. I'd like to fund a legal defense initiative specifically for women in tech and business who face this kind of targeted financial warfare. Would the foundation be interested in partnering? Claire's exhaustion vanished. Absolutely. Let's exchange information and talk tomorrow. Opportunities like that kept appearing as the foundation's reputation grew. Women with resources wanting to help women without them. Lawyers offering pro bono services. Accountants volunteering to help with financial planning. Therapists providing trauma counseling. The foundation became a network of support, mentorship, and shared experience that grew stronger every month. Claire's story inspired others to share theirs publicly for the first time. Blog posts appeared on major platforms, articles in national magazines, television interviews where women spoke truth about financial manipulation, legal abuse, and the long, difficult road to recovery. You started a movement, Rachel said one evening over wine in Claire's kitchen, while the baby slept upstairs and the baby monitor hummed softly on the counter. You made it safe for women to talk about something that was always shrouded in shame and silence. I just told the truth. That's all. The truth was always there, hidden in plain sight. People just needed permission to see it and name it for what it was. That's what movements are. Someone brave enough to tell the truth first. Claire didn't feel particularly brave most days. She felt tired and overwhelmed and uncertain whether she was doing any of this right. Motherhood, leadership, healing. But she kept showing up, kept trying, kept choosing courage over comfort, even when every instinct screamed at her to hide. 18 months into Brandon's 4-year sentence, his lawyer requested a meeting with Claire through proper legal channels. She almost declined immediately, her first instinct to refuse any contact with anything related to her ex-husband. What could he possibly want now, she asked Margaret over coffee at the foundation headquarters, suspicious of any outreach after months of silence. I don't know, but he can't hurt you anymore, Margaret reminded her gently. The courts have ruled on everything. The assets are protected. Your parental rights are terminated. Whatever this is, you have all the power here. You're not that scared woman in the courtroom anymore. Claire agreed to a phone call, nothing more. No face-to-face meeting, no video conference. Just voices over a line she could hang up anytime she wanted. Brandon's voice sounded different when his lawyer patched him through from the prison phone system. Quieter, less certain. The arrogance that had once defined every interaction between them was completely absent. "Thank you for taking my call," he said, and she could hear the genuine surprise that she'd agreed. "I know I don't deserve your time or your attention." "You're right, you don't. What do you want, Brandon?" Claire kept her voice neutral, professional, revealing nothing. "I'm up for early release. Good behavior, completion of all my therapy requirements, no disciplinary incidents. If the parole board approves it, I'll be out in 6 months instead of serving the full sentence. My lawyer says part of the evaluation includes demonstrating rehabilitation and accountability to the people I've harmed." Claire waited, saying nothing, giving him no help or encouragement. "I was hoping you might consider writing a letter to the parole board. Not forgiving me, I know that's not possible, and I don't deserve it. Just acknowledging that I've tried to make amends in small ways. That I've paid child support consistently without fighting or missing payments. That I haven't contested the parental rights termination or tried to contact you or the children inappropriately." Claire felt anger flare hot in her chest. "You mean the child support you are court-ordered to pay as a condition of your plea deal? The rights termination you couldn't contest because you'd already committed documented fraud? You want credit for following the law and honoring agreements you had no choice but to accept?" Silence on the line, long and uncomfortable. "You're right," Brandon finally said, his voice small. "That was stupid of me. Incredibly stupid. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have asked. I'll let you go." "Brandon, I'm going to say something, and I want you to really hear it," Claire interrupted before he could hang up. "I don't hate you anymore. I genuinely don't. That probably surprises you, but it's true. Hate requires energy and emotional investment I don't have for you anymore." "Okay," he said cautiously, "but I also don't owe you anything. Not a letter, not forgiveness, not a moment of my time beyond this conversation. You destroyed our marriage through calculated betrayal. You tried to steal from your dying mother and did steal from her company. You weaponized the legal system to try to destroy me when I wouldn't quietly disappear. You did all of that for money and ego and control. I know all of that. Do you? Because even now, even after everything, you're asking me to help you, to do something for you. You haven't changed at the fundamental level. You're just learning to ask more politely for the things you want." A long pause. She could hear him breathing, could picture him in whatever small room they gave prisoners for phone calls. "You're right," Brandon said quietly, defeat evident in every syllable. "You're absolutely right. I'm sorry for wasting your time. I won't contact you again." The line went dead. Oshan. Claire sat with her phone in her hand, feeling oddly empty rather than triumphant. She'd expected anger or satisfaction from killing him off. Instead, she just felt tired of the whole situation, ready to move forward without looking back. Margaret called an hour later, somehow already knowing about the conversation through the mysterious network of lawyers and legal assistants who seemed to communicate telepathically. "I heard about Brandon's request. You okay?" "Yeah, I think I am. He's never going to truly understand what he did, is he? Not at the level that would require genuine change." "Probably not. People like Brandon, narcissists with control issues, don't usually transform at a fundamental level. They just learn to hide their nature better, to ask for things more strategically. Therapy helps them understand their patterns, but rarely changes the underlying personality. The kids will want to know about him someday. They'll have questions I won't be able to answer in ways that make sense to them. And you'll tell them age-appropriate truth when that time comes. That their father made terrible choices, that he's trying to do better now in his limited way, that it's okay to have complicated feelings about a parent who hurt the other parent, that loving someone doesn't mean excusing their behavior. What if they want a relationship with him eventually?" Margaret's voice was firm but kind. "Then you'll support them while maintaining your boundaries. That's years away, Claire. Literal years. Don't borrow tomorrow's troubles. You have enough on your plate today." Sound advice, but hard to follow when your brain insisted on catastrophizing every possible future scenario. Claire spent that evening looking through photos from her marriage, boxes she'd put in storage after the divorce because she couldn't bear to look at them. Now she sorted through carefully, slowly. Brandon holding her hand at their wedding, both of them so young and hopeful. Their honeymoon in Italy, standing in front of the Trevi Fountain making wishes. Christmas mornings with terrible matching pajamas. The early years when things were good, or when she believed they were good, before she understood the difference between genuine love and performed affection. She selected a few photos where they both looked genuinely happy, put them in a nice album for the kids, something they could look at someday without her present, forming their own opinions about their father. They deserved to know he was once capable of love, even if he'd lost his way completely. The rest of the photos went in a box marked "Keep but don't display, children's choice later." Someday Miriam, Patricia, and James might want these memories of their parents together. Or they might not. Either way, Claire would let them decide rather than making that choice for them. 3 months later, Brandon was released on early parole. The news hit social media immediately despite his team's attempts to keep it quiet. Claire's phone exploded with messages from supporters and journalists, everyone asking if she was okay, if she felt safe, if she wanted to comment. She posted a simple statement on the foundation's official accounts. "I'm aware of today's news regarding my ex-husband's release. I have no comment and request privacy for my family. Thank you for your continued support of the foundation's work helping women escape financial abuse." Brandon honored his agreement not to contact her directly. She heard through Margaret that he'd moved to Colorado, taken a mid-level job in tech support for a small company, and was slowly, quietly trying to rebuild some kind of life. He continued sending child support payments on time through the proper channels. He requested no visitation, filed no motions, made no attempts to challenge the parental rights termination. "He knows he destroyed that bridge permanently," Margaret reported during their weekly check-in call. "Even he's not delusional enough to think he has a right to see those kids after everything he did." "Part of me feels sorry for him," Claire admitted, surprising herself. "He's missing their entire childhood. Their first words, first steps, first everything. That's his loss, and it's enormous. That's because you're a fundamentally kind person, even to people who don't deserve your kindness. But don't let empathy become guilt. You didn't put him in prison or cost him his relationship with his children. His choices did that. Own your strength, not his consequences." The foundation celebrated its second anniversary with a documentary premiere about financial abuse in marriage. Claire was interviewed extensively, along with dozens of women who'd escaped similar situations using the foundation's resources. The filmmaker was a woman named Catherine Brooks, who'd experienced financial abuse herself and wanted to raise awareness. The documentary screening filled a theater in downtown Austin. Claire sat in the back row, watching her story play out on screen, hearing her own voice explain concepts she'd learned through painful experience. The filmmaker asked the question everyone wanted answered. "Do you regret fighting back so hard? Was all the pain and public scrutiny worth it?" Claire's face on screen was thoughtful, considering the question seriously before responding. "People think revenge is about hurting the person who hurt you, making them suffer the way they made you suffer. But that's not what this was for me. This was about refusing to disappear, refusing to accept that I didn't matter. Brandon wanted me to take $2 million and fade away quietly while he built his life with Lauren. Society expected me to be grateful for the scraps and not make waves. Even some of his mother's lawyers expected me to settle rather than fight because fighting was difficult and expensive and uncertain." She leaned forward, making direct eye contact with the camera. "But I didn't want revenge. I wanted justice and acknowledgement that what he did was wrong. I wanted other women to see someone fight back and win so they'd know it was possible. Know that standing up to financial abuse wasn't hopeless. And yes, it was worth it. Every difficult moment, every terrifying legal battle. Every night I cried myself to sleep wondering if I'd made a terrible mistake. Because I taught my children through my actions that you stand up to bullies even when you're scared, especially when you're scared." The audience applauded when the documentary ended. Women approached Claire afterward, some crying, some angry, all grateful to see their experiences reflected and validated. "This saved my life," one woman said, gripping Claire's hands tightly. "I thought I was going crazy. My husband told me I was too stupid to understand our finances, that I should just trust him. But after watching this, I checked our accounts. He's been hiding money for years, preparing to leave me with nothing. I called a lawyer today. Stories like that made everything worthwhile. The public exposure, the vulnerability, the reliving of trauma. If Claire's pain could prevent even one other woman's suffering, it was worth it. This is your legacy, Dr. Okonkwo said after watching the documentary at the premiere. Not the money or the court victory. This, helping others find their strength by sharing your story honestly. It's Miriam's legacy, really, Claire corrected gently. She started this by protecting me, by seeing value in me when her son didn't. I'm just carrying it forward, honoring her memory by helping other women the way she helped me. The documentary won awards at film festivals. It streamed on major platforms where millions of women watched and shared it. Claire received thousands of messages from women saying it helped them understand their situations, gave them courage to leave, validated feelings they'd been told were unreasonable. The foundation's work expanded exponentially after the documentary's release. They hired more staff, opened more offices, helped more women every month. Claire's book, Breaking Free, A Guide to Surviving Financial Abuse, became a bestseller that stayed on lists for months. She'd become, somewhat reluctantly, a public figure, a symbol of fighting back against powerful men who tried to crush women who challenged them. An example that surviving wasn't enough. You could thrive afterward, build something meaningful from the ruins. Miriam, Patricia, and James started preschool on a bright September morning, wearing matching backpacks that were almost as big as they were. They held Claire's hands tightly, excited and nervous in equal measure about this new adventure. "Are you crying, Mommy?" Miriam asked with 3-year-old concern, noticing the tears Claire was trying to hide behind her sunglasses. "Happy tears, baby. I'm just so proud of you. All of you." The house felt unbearably quiet when she returned after drop-off. Claire spent the morning at Foundation headquarters downtown, throwing herself into work to avoid the strange empty nest feeling that didn't make sense when your children were only 3 years old and would be home in 4 hours. Her assistant Miranda knocked on her office door around 10:30. "Claire, there's someone here to see you. Lauren Schaefer. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's important." Claire's stomach dropped sickeningly. "Send her in." Lauren looked different than she had at Brandon's trial 3 years ago. Older, more worn. Still pretty, but without the glowing confidence and smug satisfaction from before. She carried a toddler on her hip, James, Brandon's first son, now almost 4 years old. "I'm so sorry for showing up like this," Lauren said nervously, not quite meeting Claire's eyes. "I wouldn't have come, but I didn't know where else to go. I have nobody else to ask." "What's wrong?" Claire kept her voice neutral, revealing nothing. "Brandon stopped paying child support 3 months ago. He lost his job in Colorado, and now he's completely disappeared. I don't know where he is. I filed with the court, but they can't find him either to enforce the order. I'm working 2 jobs, but it's not enough. Daycare costs more than my entire rent. I'm about to lose my apartment. I'm about to lose everything." She started crying, tears streaming down her face while her son watched with worried eyes. "I know you have absolutely no reason to help me. I know what I did to you, how I helped Brandon hurt you, but I'm desperate and I have nowhere else to turn. My son needs food and a safe place to sleep, and I don't know what to do." Claire sat back in her leather office chair, studying Lauren carefully. 3 years ago, she would have felt savage satisfaction at seeing the other woman brought low, karma delivering justice. Now she just felt tired of the endless cycle of hurt people hurting people. "Does James know who I am?" Claire asked carefully. Lauren shook her head quickly. "I haven't told him about the triplets. You terminated Brandon's parental rights, so I figured you wouldn't want any connection to us. They're half-siblings. They should know each other if both families are willing." "Really?" Lauren's eyes went wide with surprise and hope. "Really, but this happens on my terms. Supervised visits at first. And you need to be honest with your son about his family situation in an age-appropriate way. No lies, no manipulation, no using the kids as pawns." Lauren nodded eagerly, desperately. "Yes, anything. I'll do anything. Thank you so much." "I'm not done," Claire continued firmly. "The Foundation has emergency assistance programs specifically for single mothers in crisis. You'll work with our financial counselor to create a realistic budget. You'll attend our support groups regularly. You'll do the actual work to stabilize your situation and prevent this from happening again. This isn't a handout where I solve all your problems. It's a hand up where we give you tools and you do the hard work. Understand? I understand completely. Thank you. Thank you so much. Claire walked Lauren through the intake process personally, connecting her with the Foundation's best resources. Scheduling her first supervised visit with the children for the following Saturday afternoon. That night, she told Dr. Okonkwo about it over their weekly video call while sipping tea in her quiet kitchen. "Are you sure about this?" the doctor asked carefully. "After everything she did to you, everything she was complicit in?" "No, I'm not sure at all," Claire admitted honestly. "But that little boy didn't do anything wrong. He didn't choose his parents or their terrible decisions. And my kids deserve to know their brother if both families are willing to make it work." Besides, Lauren was young and stupid and manipulated by a man who was very good at manipulation. She's paying for her mistakes now. Maybe I can help her avoid some of the mistakes I made. "You're a better person than most people would be in your situation." "I'm not better than anyone. I'm just trying to break the cycle of hurt people hurting people. Help people, help people. I'd rather be in that second category than perpetuate the first one." The first play date was awkward in all the expected ways. James was shy, hiding behind his mother's legs in Claire's living room. The triplets were intensely curious about this new person, especially Miriam, who immediately tried to share her toys with aggressive enthusiasm. "That's your brother," Claire told her children simply, kneeling down to their level. "His name is James too, just like your brother. He's your daddy's son from before you were born." "Hi, James," Patricia waved enthusiastically, unbothered by the complexity of blended family dynamics. By the end of the afternoon, all four children were playing together in the living room, building towers with blocks and knocking them down with delighted shrieks. Claire and Lauren watched from the kitchen, drinking coffee in careful silence. "Why are you being so nice to me?" Lauren finally asked quietly. "I don't understand. I helped Brandon try to destroy you." Claire considered her answer carefully. "Because someone was nice to me when I needed it desperately. Miriam, Brandon's mother, she saw me struggling and helped me even though she didn't have to, even though Brandon probably told her not to. She taught me that kindness isn't about whether someone deserves it. It's about who you want to be as a person." Lauren wiped her eyes, mascara smudging. "I'm sorry for everything. I know I've said it before, but I mean it more now than I did then. I was selfish and cruel, and I hurt you terribly for no good reason." "Yes, you did," Claire agreed without sugarcoating. "And I've forgiven you, which doesn't mean I've forgotten or that we're going to be friends. It means I'm not carrying anger about it anymore. That's for me, not for you. I refuse to let your mistakes poison my present." "I understand. Thank you for even giving us this chance." Over the following months, the children's relationship grew naturally. James came over every other Saturday afternoon, gradually becoming more comfortable and outgoing. Lauren got a better job through the Foundation's Giant Placement program and moved into a nicer apartment in a safer neighborhood. She attended support groups religiously and followed every recommendation from the financial counselor. Claire didn't become close with Lauren, but they developed a cordial working relationship built on honesty and very clear boundaries. They were never going to be friends, but they could be cooperative co-parents of sorts for the children's sake. Miriam asked questions, of course. She was the most perceptive and verbal of the three, always trying to understand the world around her. "Why doesn't our daddy live with us like other kids' daddies?" she asked one evening during bath time. Claire had prepared for this conversation, had rehearsed different versions of this answer. "Your daddy made some bad choices when you were born. He hurt people and broke laws, so he had to go away for a while. He loves you in his way, but he can't be here right now. Will he come back someday? Maybe, when you're older and can understand more, if you want to meet him then." "Do you want us to meet him?" Miriam asked, her big eyes serious. Complicated question from a 3-year-old. "I want you to make your own choices when you're old enough to understand everything about your family. For now, you have me and Aunt Rachel and Aunt Margaret and Dr. Okonkwo and so many people who love you very much. That's enough, isn't it?" Miriam thought about it with the seriousness only a preschooler could bring to existential questions. "Yes, that's enough." The foundation's work expanded internationally during the triplets' preschool years. They partnered with organizations in the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand to share resources and legal strategies for combating financial abuse. Claire spoke at conferences about financial abuse patterns and became a reluctant expert on a subject she'd never wanted to know anything about. You should write a book, Margaret suggested over lunch at the foundation one afternoon. A comprehensive guide, not just your memoir. About what specifically? Your story as a framework, but then practical advice. How to recognize financial abuse before it's too late. How to protect yourself legally. How to document everything. How to escape safely. How to rebuild afterward. There's nothing comprehensive out there that combines personal story with actionable guidance. Claire considered it while watching her children play through the office window. Maybe, when the kids are older and I have more time. You'll never have more time than you do right now, Margaret countered pragmatically. You'll just have different demands on that time. You'll make time for this because it matters, because it could help thousands of women. So Claire started writing in the early mornings before the children woke up, sitting at her kitchen table with coffee and watching the sunrise. It took 2 years of stolen hours, but she finished. Breaking Free, A Guide to Surviving Financial Abuse, combined her personal story with practical legal and financial advice, resource lists, safety planning guides, and stories from dozens of women who'd escaped similar situations. The book became a bestseller within weeks of publication, staying on multiple lists for months. The book tour was exhausting, city after city, bookstore after bookstore, interview after interview. But it was also deeply rewarding in ways Claire hadn't anticipated. Women lined up at every stop to share their stories, thank her, ask for advice, tell her the book had saved their lives or their sisters' lives or their friends' lives. Claire realized she'd become a symbol of something larger than herself, living proof that you could survive devastating betrayal and build something meaningful from the ruins. The house smelled like birthday cake and absolute chaos in the best possible way. The triplets were turning 6, and they'd invited their entire first-grade class plus half the neighborhood. 20 screaming children ran through the backyard while Claire and Rachel attempted crowd control. "This is why I don't have kids," Rachel joked, watching a boy named Tyler try to eat birthday cake with both hands while simultaneously jumping on the trampoline. "This is why I drink wine," Claire laughed. James was there too, now 7, helping his younger half-siblings open presents with the patience of an older brother. The kids thought of each other simply as siblings, no half-qualifier needed in their minds. Lauren helped with the piñata, comfortable now in her role as cooperative co-parent. She'd gotten engaged to a high school teacher named Marcus, who she'd met at a foundation support group. He was kind, patient with James, respectful of the complicated family dynamics. After the party ended and the sugar-crashed kids sprawled on the couch, Claire sat on her porch watching the sunset with a well-deserved glass of wine. Her phone buzzed with messages. One from Margaret about next week's board meeting. One from Dr. Okonkwo about the kids' checkup. One from Rachel about drinks tomorrow night. And one from an email address she didn't recognize. "Claire, it's Brandon. I know I promised not to contact you, but the kids are getting older, and I would like to resume child support now that I'm working steadily, not because I expect visitation, I know that's impossible, but because they're my children and deserve support. My lawyer will contact yours. I'm not asking for anything except the chance to do the right thing, even if it's years too late. I hope you and the kids are well." Claire read it 3 times, waiting for anger that never came. She felt nothing except mild acknowledgement that Brandon was trying, in his limited way, to be better. She forwarded it to Margaret. "Verify employment before accepting anything. No direct contact, everything through lawyers." That night, she stood in the doorway watching her children sleep. Miriam sprawled sideways, Patricia curled tight, James snoring softly. Someone had once told her she wasn't enough, that she was broken, that she should disappear quietly. That person was wrong about everything. Claire had built a life that proved it, not through revenge, but by refusing to let his cruelty define her future. The foundation had helped over 5,000 women. Her book had reached millions more. Her children were healthy and loved and secure. She pulled out Miriam's final letter. "You are more than enough. You always have been." Claire folded it carefully, returned it to its place of honor. She stepped onto the porch under the enormous Texas sky. Brandon was out there somewhere trying to rebuild. Lauren was planning a wedding. Margaret was working late as always. Rachel was editing party photos. Dr. Okonkwo was probably delivering someone's baby. And Claire was here, in the home she'd fought to keep. Raising children she'd fought to protect. Running a foundation, helping women fight their own battles. People always asked if she regretted fighting back. The answer was always no. She'd fought for acknowledgement, for justice, for the right to exist on her own terms, for a future where her children would know their mother stood up to bullies, outsmarted opponents with more resources, and rebuilt from ruins. Some women wanted revenge. Claire had wanted peace. It turned out you could have both. Her phone buzzed. Security system armed. All doors locked. Have a good night. Safe. Protected. Home. Claire raised her glass to the night sky, to Miriam watching from somewhere, to the woman she used to be and the woman she'd become. Thank you, she whispered, for everything. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new women needing help, new chapters in the ongoing story. But tonight she was exactly where she belonged, with her children sleeping safely, with resources to help others, with freedom hard-won and carefully guarded, with peace that came not from revenge, but from refusing to accept less than she deserved. Claire Morrison had been told she wasn't enough. She'd spent 6 years proving otherwise, and she was just getting started.